Hey everybody, it's Monday, May 5th, and I want to thank you guys for tuning into the show. I hope you guys had a pretty excellent weekend. I know I did. And now we can get started. Hey guys, welcome to the Business and Bootstrapping podcast, where we believe in busting your ass and bootstrapping your startup to build the business and life of your dreams. I'm your host, Matt Ward, and if you enjoyed the show today, please check us out at businessandbootstrapping.com to get more great tips, tricks, and interviews with successful entrepreneurs. Thanks, and let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to the Business and Bootstrapping podcast. I'm super excited to have Scott Yewell, who many of you may know from the Bootstrapped with Kids podcast, on the show today. Scott's got a lot of experience in the corporate world and recently decided to jump off the train and work on a partnership to start a web design firm. Thanks so much for joining us, Scott.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Matt. Thanks for inviting me.
So the first thing that I really wanted to do now that I got you on the show, by the way, I just started listening to your show. I just found out about it, and I really like it. You guys should check it out at bootstrappedwithkids.com. So you recently were working at Oracle less than a year ago, and you were there for a pretty short amount of time working as the principal product manager, and all of a sudden you jumped ship. Can you take us back there a bit?
Sure. So it's a longer story. I was working at Oracle up until February, and before that, so Oracle acquired a company that I was working for before that called Acme Packet. And it was just a huge culture change. So Acme Packet was about an 800-person company that was making really innovative, cutting-edge technology for for AT&T and Verizon that helps their networks talk to each other. It's like a voice over IP firewall that does all this really technical stuff. It was honestly the most complicated product I've ever touched or heard of. It has so many features. It's nuts. So there's a neat product to learn about. Oracle has a group called Oracle Communications that's trying to make a move into the AT&T and Verizon to be a better provider for them. So they sell software to them already. Now they're trying to sell hardware to them. And so they bought the small company I was in. And then when that happened, you had the weight of a 117,000 person company with its processes and all that stuff integrating an 800-person company that had been really innovative, and it was just total. It's very uncomfortable. So we'd been driving so hard to make a really exciting new product and find new markets for it, and then it's pretty much, hey, just stop everything for 8 months. We have to integrate you. So we were just there trying to, integrate. It's not what I ever wanted to do, to be honest. That was not like my dream, was to help integrate a small company to a large company. Which wasn't that much fun. So my wife we had our second child in January, and I was home for 3 weeks on paternity leave, or just taking vacation because we don't have paternity leave in the U.S. And talking to a friend of mine who I've been talking to for the last 6 months about side projects and startups and technology, and I was telling it's been great being away from the job for 3 weeks. I don't really want to go back. And he's like, well, what if you didn't have to go back? I'm like, what are you talking about? And so this friend, he owned a web development shop, and he is working on a new business and needed someone to come in and help him run this business, and said, what if you just come on board and we'll make this a partnership, and we'll see how big it can get. So that was an awesome opportunity. It's not, where I've been trying to get to the last 2 years was, having a SaaS product that drove a full-time income to pay for the family and the mortgage. This isn't that, but it's a whole lot closer to that than integrating into a 117,000 person company. So it's a total step up. Yeah.
You go from having a relatively small company culture, and all of a sudden you guys just get acquired and get that 800-pound gorilla on your back of screw innovation. This is your new priorities. And what were some of the things that you were thinking while you were in corporate America? What were some of the examples that really frustrated you?
So, it's cliche, but just meetings about meetings, so it seemed like the bigger the company gets, the more people are afraid of doing the wrong thing. And so we have to check in with each other all the time just to make sure we're doing the right thing. And everybody knows what we're doing. And if we don't express the information to everyone in a meeting, then we're not actually getting the work done. And it seems like the work product is actually minutes spent in meetings. It's not actually things that matter to the customer. And that discord just drove me nuts. A lot of people, they don't care. And you just go to work and they pay you and you do your job and you do what your boss says and you're happy. And I've been trying to do that for the last 14 years and just always just kind of felt wrong the whole time, but I didn't know what else to do. So really 3 years ago was listening to Startups for the Rest of Us, the podcast. And it was the first time I was like, wait, there's another path. There's something else you can do where You get to do the cool business stuff that I'm really excited about, but you're also directly in touch with the customer. And that's such a great place to be, because there is no false work product. If you don't do a good job, they don't buy it and you don't make any money. And there's just a great tight feedback loop that really, I think, makes for a great business.
Yeah, I love the Startups for the Rest of Us podcast. I'm actually talking to Mike later today.
Oh, no kidding. Great.
Yeah, recording another one. So one of the questions I had for you, and it's kind of something I've felt myself, and I think most entrepreneurs out there, they have this little bug, this little tickling itch. They just don't like the world they're really given with. You said the last 14 years, you've kind of just dealt with clocking in and then clocking out. What were some of the examples of or reasons that you think why you've always kind of felt this way?
That's a great question. I don't have a great answer for it right now. I guess it's more that when you're in a situation and you're living by other people's rules, I feel like most people, if you look at most people that are out there, it seems like they're looking for rules to follow. And I argue even you and I are looking for rules to follow. It's easier to follow somebody else's script than to write your own, and probably more better chance of success than somebody else already figured out the pitfalls and all that. But there's times when you know that you have a good idea, or that maybe there's a different angle that could work, and it's just not the way it's going to get done, and that's just frustrating. Not that we should all be exploring every opportunity that comes out, but I guess I feel like if you're a creative person and you like to make a difference, you get frustrated when someone tells you can't. So that's sort of what I think what drove me. And then there's also, autonomy and freedom. So about 2 years ago, my wife and I moved to this town called Newburyport, which is awesome. Like there's a river over here, and there's like a beach like a mile that way. It's freaking great. The thing is, it's 45 minutes from any kind of technology company at best. So the last 2 years, I was commuting an hour to work and like an hour and a half to 2 hours back. And that's not how I want to spend my life. So what are the options? I could go work at the bar down the street, or I could find some other job, but those aren't appealing to me. I'm bringing those up as opportunities because they're local. It's local work. I wouldn't have to commute. But now we have the internet, and so you can find a job on the internet. So I was thinking about how could I get more freedom, and that just kind of wrapped up with the whole entrepreneurship and start your own company and find some way to make money online kind of thing.
So that's one of the things that I know I really struggled with too, is the whole, I'm going to go drive an hour to work, drive an hour back from work. It's just like you're commuting to something that isn't even fulfilling. So what is the point of even going? Is that how you discovered podcast? Is that kind of your time where you really reached out?
Definitely. And it initially was trying to find some sort of source of education that worked while I was driving. And you can't read books. So podcasts work really well that way. And then I think it basically reprogrammed my brain over like 8 months to a year of listening to these kind of small startup podcasts. And God, I hope they have that effect on other people too, where it just starts making you think a little different of, I don't have to do this thing that I'm not really enjoying anymore. So I'm glad you're doing your podcast and just trying to get the word out some other angles too. That's great.
That's totally why I started the podcast. I was telling you a little bit before the show, but about a year ago, I was interning in Germany over at Airbus for a mechanical engineering kind of position. I just realized, shit, this is not what I'm doing with my life. I just do not like this. So I discovered podcasts through a friend and quickly worked my way up to like Tropical MBA and some of the other really great.
Those are great.
Yeah, they're great. Some of the other great entrepreneurship podcasts. And it just changes your frame of mind. Before going to Germany, I was more focused on the Silicon Valley startups of let's go raise 10 million in funding and then accelerate growth without really building a business. And then I learned just all about kind of the solopreneur kind of style of let's just build something that works. You're going to bootstrap your ass off, save money, and try to build something. And I think there's a huge shift. Another personal story before I get back to you. I have a friend, and I was commuting as a student to Georgia Tech this semester. And in the car rides, I eventually decided to show him podcasts.
Sure.
And he was very hardcore into aerospace engineering. And by the end of the semester, he was coming up with business ideas saying, I don't know if I want to be an engineer the rest of my life kind of deal. And it's so addictive once you realize there's another alternative.
Totally.
I'm glad that even though you kind of had to suffer through the commuting and suffer through that it worked out for you and it's helping you to work on growing something now.
Oh, they're awesome. I mean, even now, I don't have as much time I don't have as much time in the car anymore, so I don't listen to as many podcasts. And I miss actually those characters in my life now. It's sort of a bummer. But when I get a chance, either at the gym or something like that, that's why I don't listen to music. I listen to podcasts. And just because you get those ideas, and those are so invigorating, like, oh my God, I'm going to go home and try that right now. And it's great.
One of the things that I personally picked up on was the Double Speed podcast recently. So
Totally.
I'd never done it before. I couldn't think I could handle it, but you do it, and all of a sudden you're listening, and you realize you're picking up everything, and you just can't go back. I want to say just commuting back and forth to school, which was actually my last day. I'm officially a free guy now, and totally
nice.
a full-time entrepreneur. I think I listened to 5 of your episodes in the car, just playing that Double Speed.
Well, I apologize for that much of my voice. Yeah.
No, you guys are great. Speaking of which, why did you and Breck decide to start the podcast, and how do you guys know each other?
Sure. So we met on, so this is 3 years ago, 2.5 years, 3 years ago, almost right now. I had been listening to these podcasts for a while, and I wanted to start something, but I felt like I could build stuff, but I didn't know what to build. And so I went on a website called Co-Founders Lab, cofounderslab.com. And so through that, I started searching in the area about who were other local people, and I picked out, it's totally online dating for, entrepreneur, tech nerds, whatever. So I clicked on a couple faces, found some people I liked. I emailed them, contacted them. Out of those, one of them was Breck, and we had lunch together at this Thai place. And just, hey, what were you doing on the way over here? I was like, I was listening to a podcast. Which one? Oh, Mixergy. Oh, I like that one. Which one? I mean, it just kind of fell right into it. And it was this great conversation. He kind of told me his backstory about his app, and I was just blown away. I'm like, if you don't know his whole story, he had a really tough year in real estate and basically found an online resource of information that he reformatted and sold. And in the first month made $1,000 off, basically 10 hours of work, and thought, I got a business here. And then he scaled that up over the last 4 years into a pretty sizable business, which is great. And he's learned a ton along the way. Just all he's great at the selling on a page. Like, he's just awesome about how to build a sales page and how to get someone to convert. So we were talking about that, and it was a skill set that I have never developed. I can write Ruby, I can write PHP, I can build out databases, I can do JavaScript, I can do front end stuff. I know how to build stuff, but I didn't know what to build. And so I felt like he had a good angle on business opportunities and how to voice them and frame them. He could do sales and marketing and ideation, and I could take those ideas and build them out. And so the way our relationship evolved is we made a little test project, which was a job board. So I built that out in Rails and put it on Heroku and got that up running in a couple months. We just started. So that worked out. Like, we could work together. We could communicate about the ideas and launch them pretty effectively. And that sort of evolved. Okay, so what's a real big, like a good revenue idea that we could come up with? Because that job board never made any money. And tried 2 or 3 ideas. And then a friend of his reached out to him and said, I have a problem with commercial real estate listings. And that's how really we got into our main app. That's not answering your question. Your question was, why podcasting? So about 4 months into building this real estate listing app, Breck had set a goal that year that he wanted to raise his profile within the legitimate online entrepreneur community. And so he said, well, let's start a podcast about this app we're building. And so we did, and we came up with the name Bootstrapped with Kids, and just trying to find our niche. Like, there's Tropical MBA, and that's guys bootstrapping, but they're 27 living over in Asia. I can't do that. And I didn't feel like there was a podcast describing our path. And so we just thought we will just try it. I haven't even listened to the first ones. Again, I'm totally embarrassed by them. So I'm not sure if they're good or bad, but it was sort of just get out there and do it. We're going to figure this out. And so now we just had our 54th episode, and it's going great. And we've met, thousands of people now and had a ton of email communication. It's a great thing where you put yourself out there and you learn, and people reach out to you and they teach you stuff all the time. It's freaking awesome.
It is. It's like the minimum viable product. Just put something out there and then see how people react.
Yeah. And if they like it, they'll give you advice. It's great.
Going off that, with the job board that you guys said that you built, what would you say? You said you spent a couple months coding it up. Did you do any kind of customer discovery or try to make sure it would work? Or was it just kind of, let's build it?
Yeah. So this is like the precursor to why our real estate app failed. But no, we didn't do any customer validation. What happened? Well, we were inferring off Breck's experience. So on his current site, which is called DistressedPro, DistressedPro.com, It's a tool for people that want to invest in distressed real estate assets. He had a little job board off there, and it was making him, $10 a month kind of thing. And so he thought, well, if I can do $10 a month off a site that's not focused on that, what if we just focused on that? We could maybe do a lot more. And it turns out that that's not true. What he was actually doing was monetizing a bunch of traffic he already had. Some percentage was looking for jobs, and just building the job portion with no traffic, it wasn't ever going to work. So, yeah, that's sort of flawed from the start.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah.
Speaking of hindsight, what have you taken from that in terms of your more recent endeavors to kind of avoid the same kind of failures?
So, yeah, it's really about the validation portion. It's so exciting. And this is, God, I felt so stupid because, I went to business school and I focused on entrepreneurship, and they talk about idea validation there. I was in product management for a long time, and it's always you come with an idea, you go test it against some focus group or some survey or you get outside approval. So finally, I'm on my own, and it's my own resources, so I can do whatever I want with them. And what do? We just freaking build it, and we know validate it. And it felt like that was fine because I wasn't wasting anybody else's resources. But when we got to the end of really CRE Lister, and you look back at the last year and a half, and you've been working from 8 p.m. to 2 in the morning, 4 or 5 nights a week for that long, and you're tired, you've been cranking around your family, and you've really, I guess I realized how much I'd been sacrificing. There was more than just time. Like, it wasn't free. A lot went into it. And then I look at the end result, which works technically and I think is well designed, but no one freaking cares about it. It makes me so sensitive now to not do that again because it does cost a lot. It's not free time. It's not like you're not spending money on it, but you're sacrificing a ton of experiences to do this stuff. And you have to value that.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It's the opportunity cost of how much is your time worth and really how much is your life worth.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Technically, in voicing it that way, it was strange to me, like how emotionally upset I got about it. It wasn't opportunity cost isn't doing the experience I have justice. It was more like anguish. Like, I don't know how much I can swear on your show, but I'd swear a lot right now if I was describing how I feel about that experience.
That's one of the things I like about your show. You guys are one of the real only ones I've seen that are just kind of out there and voice yourself. I was hearing that, and at double speed, of course, that sounds even funnier. So it was great. I loved it.
I'm glad we got some mixed feedback recently, so appreciate that.
Yeah. Andrew Warner was actually talking about that one. I was talking to him, but basically how content's not going to get you censored, but just saying like a stupid swear word is the kind of thing that people freak out about.
They do, yeah.
I think it's really interesting how a lot of times with people, someone's going to teach you something, and then you just go and completely do the other thing. It's not even intentional. It's not even until you've done it and learned it and just screwed up so bad that you understand this is not what I'm supposed to do. I need to change off of that. People telling you just doesn't do it for you.
It doesn't. And I'm really thankful to the podcast I listened to because they got me thinking in this direction, but they cannot teach you the whole thing. They can get you going in the right direction. And then after a certain point, the most effective thing you can do is just go and frickin' try shit and make all the mistakes. I mean, avoid them if you can, but it's sort of like hard to really understand. The words that explain what the solution is are not the same as what you go through when you're doing it right. It's sort of this disconnect. So you can read it, you can hear it, you can watch it, but until you're in the situation where you actually have to make the right decision, you don't know how to do it. So it's really important for all of us to get out there and just try these experiments and learn internally, and then go out and tell other people because you want to pull them with you and get them doing it too. But don't expect to either learn from any of these podcasts completely or to teach other people completely. The best we can do is kind of guide and get the right direction. I think you got to go through the ringer. We can't all become Rob Walling by listening to Starts the rest of us. That's not going to happen. I wish it would happen, but I think you just got to keep trying. Yeah.
One of the things that I've heard, and I want to get your opinion on this as well, is that when you tell other people about something or you try to teach them about it, you actually learn a bit more about it yourself. Have you found that with your podcast? With
the podcast, and I mean, through a lot of experiences in life. I mean, I remember going back a long time. So 1996, we were doing, you're an engineer, right? So we were doing Bodie plots. Do they teach those anymore? All right. So if you're not an engineer, Bodie plots are this arcane way to look at systems. And I didn't really get them until my girlfriend at the time, who was a chemical engineer, needed someone to explain Bodie plots to her class. So I went and kind of drew some pictures. And then her whole class wait, how do you do that? And then I was teaching 20 people how to do it. And after that, dude, I can tell you how Bodie plots work. So I think teaching does help a lot. Also with the podcast, I think when it forces you to vocalize what you've been feeling emotionally or thinking, it clarifies it too. So just getting out there and communicating about what you're doing is a great way to solidify things internally.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the questions I had for you, and I heard you voice this in one of your recent podcasts, was that you kind of felt disingenuous or fake about having the podcast that you're bootstrapped with kids when, I don't know, can you go a little into that, how you're working at Blackfin?
So the site that we built, this web app called Siri Lister, that was sort of the heart of the podcast. Is we come back every week and we share what we learned. I mean, Breck has Distress Pro, and he could teach about what he'd been learning and trying there. And I was sort of, the thing I had going on was building out Siri Lister and testing that. And then that died. We killed it in November. And then we threw together a new idea, kind of because Breck had it in his back burner about a new idea to build out there. We needed an idea for the podcast. We tried that and killed that one. Like, it wasn't a fun idea. And then we kind of had a heart-to-heart, and Breck's like, I got a really good thing with Distress Pro. I think I can, if I double down on that, I can really make that a great business. I'm not sure I have time for side projects right now. And I was like, oh, all right, I'll just come up with my own. And then I kind of felt back to that thing where I don't have any business ideas right now. I don't know what to do. And so I really felt a lot of like imposter syndrome then on the podcast because, who am I to be telling anybody about anything? I mean, I guess we're just sharing experience. I'm not actually purporting to teach people, but if they learn stuff, great. Then this Blackfin idea comes along, and it's great. I'm excited about it, but it doesn't feel like that SaaS bootstrap thing that I was trying to do. Technically, it is bootstrapped. It's all self-funded, and we have some of the same constraints as other self-funded businesses, where you have to take your revenue and your profit and reinvest that to grow more. So that's consistent. But I really felt like an imposter talking about building a SaaS business, and I've gotten over it. Mostly because people, two guys wrote in and said, well, isn't what you're doing bootstrapping? It's still self-funded. And I was like, okay, great, good point. But there's another part where I feel like, after putting ourselves out there for a year, we don't have a huge listenership. It's just like around just under 1,000 people right now, as far as I can tell. So side note, analytics for podcasts suck. I can't figure out a good analytics structure there, but
I was thinking the same thing. I thought that would be a great idea for a business, but I have no idea how to do it.
There's a couple guys out there doing it. The thing is, I don't know if I'd pay for it. So it's one of those things where I wish it was there, but I don't know if there's an economic reason. But anyway, so we have this podcast now, and we've got people that have questions, and they're asking them, and people seem to enjoy our chemistry. So we're going to keep going, just mostly because it's fun. Like, it's not so much the mission of becoming known or sharing our daily experiences or weekly experiences. It's more that there's enough to talk about, and we have a great time on the podcast talking about it. We're having fun, and we've gotten people out there who seem to like it, so there's no reason not to do it. It would be a lot more fun if we had some economic reason to do it. So we've kind of been talking about that over the last 6 months. Like, is this something we can monetize? Is this a reason is there a way to grow this into a full-time business? So there's two things there. We haven't come up with a really good idea. And the second is we're not going after people that are direct marketers or people that have a clear income stream. Like, if you're talking about bootstrap entrepreneurs, none of us have any money. So what am I going to do? Go start selling $39 ebooks about, idea validation or something like that? I mean, it just didn't feel like a really novel or cool or awesome thing to do. So I don't know. I think if we had a way to monetize it that felt good, we'd do that. And the main reason we do that is because if you have an economic incentive to do something, you're more likely to do a good job. And when you're doing something for fun or as a side project, then it gets cut. And we've missed a bunch of weeks in the last 3 months just because we're busy. If this had an economic motivator, I think we wouldn't do that. But that said, not having one isn't going to make us kill the podcast. We're just going to try to keep it going and try to keep it fun, and we'll see what happens.
That totally touched me on a lot of points. First, I kind of in the same boat where I don't have this successful business that I personally have where I'm interviewing people and I'm coming from some position of an expert. Right. I'm just kind of a random guy. I've tried a couple of things and failed a couple of things. I'm working on some other projects, but at the same time, it's how do you really try to help people if you haven't helped yourself yet?
Yeah, there's some of that, but there's lots of help. There's the technical skill help, and Sarge, the rest of us is great at that. Here's tactics that work. Here's 3 ways to do something, and there's a lot of ideas of things to try and things that have worked. And they're also sharing some of their experiences about what they've been testing, what's been working. I mean, Rob's done a lot about his launch of Drip, and Mike's talked a lot about some of the results he's had on Audit Shark. And so there's kind of a great combination there. There's also the loneliness factor. Like we're out there doing this stuff, and who else do we have around to talk to about this stuff? And having a couple of voices in your ears during the day can keep you motivated. I think that's helping itself. You got to bring good content or some angle that entertains people, but that's helpful in itself. And then I think, as you're building your podcast, you're interviewing people, you're bringing outside points of view in. It'll start building into something like that. So I don't think you have to be, a 10-year expert in this stuff. It's more about what's your angle. Because that's another part. We're all coming at this from a different angle. You're going to ask questions that some other guy's not going to ask. And so that does bring unique value to the content you're producing. And yeah, I think that's great.
That's the hope. And that hopefully by bringing on some really experienced entrepreneurs and people doing lots of different things, that regardless of what situation you're in, you're kind of able to learn something from it. That's what I like about it.
That's great. Yeah.
So you've been working recently at your partnership with Blackfin Media, and I know that's a web design company. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that came to be? I know that you said a friend kind of tossed you a lifeline and you said, I'm going for it. I'm swimming into the ocean and taking it on.
Yep. So I've been looking for something that was more entrepreneurial, obviously. And this opportunity came along. It wasn't what I was looking for. So we had to sit down and sort of what's your business look like and how does it work? And where I got really excited. So first, what Blackfin does is we primarily focus on backend development. So building out databases and in the software that makes a database visible on the web. We have partners that kind of do the front end design, so designers and stuff like that, and we can take designs and translate those into websites. But where we really do our best is building out back end stuff that people need to get done. So we're basically trusted developers that you can hire. Where I got really excited about the business when Chris was telling me about it in February was that he's never marketed himself. He's just done a great job on all of his projects, and he's got amazing word of mouth referrals. So he's got this business that he's been growing for since 2000, and a huge client list, and everyone freaking loves him, and because he's done such a great job. And it's like, holy crap, that is an asset. That's something he can build off of. And so what we're doing now is we're preparing to actually try marketing the business and building out the client list. So since I've been on board, we've been building out our development assets. We've been building out processes and standard operating procedures so that we can scale effectively, measures and QA systems so that we know if we're failing or not. So we're basically structuring a company for growth. And then we're going to start pouring gas on and see what happens. So where I get excited is, from the engineering background and some of the stuff I've learned from these big companies and business stuff is there's a great way to structure the company so that we can let this thing grow quickly, and we have the right touch points to know if it's going off the rails or to know how to accelerate it. So we have our first hypothesis of what we need for that now. And then we're, just like any other project, we're going to try to grow, see where it breaks, fix it, and keep going. But yeah, I guess to your original point, what I got excited about was he built such a great asset in his client list that it was way better than me starting my own Rails consultancy, by myself or trying to get out there and do you know who Sam Ovens is?
I do not.
Okay, so he blew Breckenmeyer's mind back in October. He was on a podcast, and he basically has a script of how to sell $10,000 fixes to websites by finding Yellow Page ads. It's awesome. So check out Sam Ovens. It's really makes you want to just go try to do it. So that was my sort of plan B, was like, I'm going to Sam Ovens this. But didn't have to do it. There's a better plan if you find someone with a big Rolodex.
So how did that work in terms of coming on as a partner? I know sometimes it's a little bit, partnerships can be interesting. What are some of the challenges you've had?
Sure. So part of it was we had a really frank, upfront conversation about the economics. I said, like, here's what I'm making right now. Here's the minimum I need to make to pay mortgage and feed the family. And can you afford that, basically? And if he could afford that, okay, now let's talk about upside and how that's going to work for both of us. And so, the arrangement we came up with was that we're going to share all the upside. So any profit we're going to make, we're going to split. And as far as equity, he's built this thing since 2000. He owns it. So he's 100% equity owner. And what we're talking about is if things go well and we're able to grow the company to the point where someone wants to buy it, then we got to talk about how the upside and the sale goes. But that's to be figured out later. For now, it's just let's see if we can make this work together. And so far, it seemed to be working great. We've got great communication. I think because of the development background and honestly having worked with Breck on building stuff out over the last 2 years, it was really easy to integrate with him and the team he built so far. So it's going really well right now. We'll have to see how it keeps going.
That's good. How big is the team right now, and what are you guys doing? I know you said you were kind of gearing it up so that you could pour gasoline on the fire. What were some of the procedures? What are some of the things you did and some things that other people could do in terms of making their businesses scale?
So we're still working on it. What we're doing is we're using existing projects to kind of vet oncoming developers. So we have kind of 3 classes of developers. We have backend developers that are database and we do everything in PHP. So backend and so SQL and PHP, those kinds of guys. And then we have front end developers who take Photoshop files and convert them into functional HTML templates. And then we have a couple guys that do kind of more operational stuff like system administration, maintenance stuff, sort of on demand, because some customers are going to have a problem that you need sort of a system admin whiz to get in there and fix things. So we have a couple of those guys. And what we've been doing is building out our capacity by hiring a couple of developers at a time to work on the same project. And so you'll have a trusted one building the project the client's probably going to use, and then a new guy that's sort of shadowing or building alongside, and you can just vet, can this guy take requirements and build out a site or not? So we're not making as much profit as we would be had we been just building these with our existing resources. But at the same time, we're able to vet and test pretty quickly new developers as they come on. And so we've been pretty aggressive at that. We're primarily hiring through Odesk, nationally, internationally, just sort of putting out feelers. We've talked a lot on Bootstrap with kids about how to hire and put a pitch together on Odesk to hire people. And I can talk through it real quick, but it's been a mishmash of advice we've gotten from Ruben Gomez and Don Felker and some other guys that are out there doing this. So that's basically what we're doing. So now we have we have 4 front-end developers and 5 or so back-end developers and 2 ops guys. That's enough for us to pretty much triple our capacity, I think. So,
I know a lot of bootstrapped entrepreneurs are working with the kind of Odesk route where they're outsourcing to other contractors, other freelancers. How do you manage with the team that you're working on, which is pretty big and pretty spread out? How do you manage to keep track of your team and keep everyone on the right page?
Sure. So I'm still figuring out the exact tools, but the core of it is you need some sort of shared project management tool. And I'm trying out Trello and Asana and a spreadsheet. So sometimes you have to go non-sexy. So those are 3 things we're trying there. And you really need that because you're not always working the same hours. So like for some of our contractors, they're in our same time zone. So that works great. Others are literally 13 hours off. And that can be difficult because you need to change and they're asleep. So how are you going to communicate? So the project management that's shared and hopefully online. The spreadsheet we're using is a Google Doc. The second is communication. Primarily use Skype, and whether in video for screen sharing or just audio or just text. And that's usually for quick communication. So once they're onboarded, I guess I should step through the whole process. Once we hire them, for any project, I write up a project overview that's pretty detailed, and it walks through all the different parts I want the developer to work on. And so for a front-end developer, it'll talk about each template and what I need out of each template, what the functionality is and how it's going to be used. So for a back-end developer, it's all the functionality. And I don't go as deep as having a sort of the user stories, because that doesn't work for all developers, but it's more about I need this function to do this. If it doesn't work, here's the failure mode. If it succeeds, here's the success mode. And I kind of walk through it. There I'm leveraging a lot of experience I had as a product manager for corporate USA, where I would have a product and have to write a requirement doc. And this is a lot like those requirement docs, but just a little lighter and more developer focused. So we have that doc and then hire them. And then so if I hire them through Odesk, they have that great tool where it's the work diary and you can actually watch your developers do work. That's super helpful because you can get a gauge of how they're developing and are they going on Stack Overflow for everything you ask them to do? Or are they like, how is it that they're building stuff, or are they just good and they're just building stuff? So that's been a really good way to vet people. And the other is check-in. So I ask my guys at the end of every day to check their code back into Bitbucket. We use Bitbucket because you can have unlimited private repos. as opposed to GitHub where you have to pay for private repos. So, I mean, there's a cap on the number of people, but we're under that right now. They check in a Bitbucket every day, and I'm currently QAing all the code. So then when I come on board in the morning, I spend a couple hours, I check out all the code, I run through some tests and see if there's any things you need to fix from the day before, and I document that all in the project management tool. And then we just track progress that way.
Okay. I think that's helpful, and I think it's also kind of interesting, you're basically really going down the bootstrapped route of you're using Skype, you're using other tools that are free or pretty inexpensive to make sure you kind of cobble together your network of team. And that's huge for somebody who doesn't have the big bucks to spend on that.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to spend a lot of you can invest in an expensive online project management tool. You don't have to. And it's awesome. It's awesome what we can do today. Kids these days don't appreciate it. No, but it's amazing. It's just what we can do.
Yeah, the internet's changed a lot of things for people. So
yeah.
I want to go in a bit of a different route now and ask you a little bit more about your family and how all of this has impacted them. So a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startup guys are more young guys like me, young girls perhaps as well. They're traveling or they're doing this and that. You've got a family, you've got kids, and you're locked into Massachusetts where you are right now. How does that work for you and your family dynamic in terms of kind of support and then the stress that jumping off the safe bandwagon and really doing your own thing works?
Sure. It's been interesting, and the stress part is a big part of that. So, wow, that's a tough question. All right. So first, let's talk about what life was like working for corporate America. So I was leaving for work at 7:30, and then talk to my wife maybe once or twice during the day, just check in, but kind of think about work all day long. And then struggling to get out of the office by 5 so I can beat the traffic to get home. If I'm 10 minutes late, then it adds 40 minutes to my commute. And I just had looming over my head, like, this, make sure you get out in time. And there's times when you don't, and it feels horrible. And she's managing 1 and now 2 kids, which by the end of the day are exhausted. So you finally get home into an environment where everyone's stressed out. It's just got to get dinner on the table, eat it, and then get into the bedtime routine and go to bed. And it was very there's a lot of pressure. And like, we had great family moments. I'm not saying it was all stress all the time, but like, there's a rigid schedule. And if something was going on at work, like my boss's boss, the chief marketing officer, calls me into our office for an update, it's sort of hard to say, no, I got to run. And it just felt bad. And I didn't like it, if that makes sense.
That completely makes sense.
So I'm lucky in that my wife, she's awesome and she's super supportive. She owns her own business. She's a decorative painter, and she's been an artist her whole life. She's an artist and has never really worried about following other people's rules because, F you, I'm an artist. So I start talking about, well, I want to do my own thing, and she's totally supportive and encouraging. And really the only time where things got tough was when I was sacrificing family time for entrepreneurship time. And, in my head, I'm justifying like, yeah, but I'm doing it for us. If I put the time in now, we'll have more time together later. And I think that could be true. I also think it's a trap that if you think that way, you'll end up working that way forever. And how do you let go, really? DHH from 37 Signals, I wish I could say his last name, David had a quote about, where he had a blog post about workaholics. And if that's your mode of working, you're going to be like that all the time. And even when he was starting 37 Signals, it sounded like he had a work-life balance, which is, I think, something you should strive for. My perspective's changed now that I'm not going to work at Oracle every day. Not that Oracle's worse. Some people love it. So then I contrast that with now. So we wake up, I walk my kid to school at 8:30, and I'm back home by like 9:05. Chris, who's my business partner, his kid goes to the same school, so we have a business meeting outside the school from like 9 to 9:15. We check in every morning. Come home, hop online, check with all developers, check out the code. Son comes home at noon. We have lunch together with my wife and my other son. 1 o'clock, go back to work till 5 or 6, and then I'm home. And the whole schedule pressure is gone. I'm spending more time with my family. It just feels way better. I'm making way less money than I used to make. And that has stress to it too. But that's just because, Operation Accelerate Growth hasn't happened yet. So we're going to get there. But I mean, overall, typically what I was worried about before I am working as I am right now was I'm going to have to build up runway because at some point I'm going to make a leap where I'm not making any money for 6 to 8 months. And that's going to be really stressful on the family. And we got to make sure they're eating. And that's not how life evolved. And that would be a lot more stressful. And I know a couple of guys now just from being in the entrepreneurship circles that have done that, and one successfully, one not. And the upside there is that, at least from these guys' stories, there's always recovery. You can always go get a job and swallow your pride and take it back and pay for your mortgage for a little bit. But it wasn't what I thought it would be, the transition stress. It was much more like I changed jobs and it just felt amazing. And really what I'm struggling with now is like, how do I get out of the employee mindset? Like I still feel like I need to report to somebody, or I should check in with Chris, my partner, on everything I do and stuff, just because I've had to do it for so long. And a couple times it's growing more every day, but where I can see a problem or an opportunity and just go after it and change it and make everything better and not worry about who's going to not like it, it has been amazing. Just totally enabled.
I think that's really interesting and really true that sometimes just changing what you're doing, it can change you and change your life, but a lot of times your habits, some of your little tendencies, people still look to other people for validation even when they know it's kind of just rubbish.
Well, yeah, they do. I mean, especially I don't want everyone here to think I think corporate life is wrong for everybody. I think it's right for some people. I think if you're entrepreneurial and you have pride in your own work and you have confidence that your work is good, it starts getting really frustrating. That some other people who have been there longer or who have played the game better or who are better at politics are making decisions about your quality of work when they're not actually competent in it. That part drives me insane and makes me angry and see red. Like I hate it. So
it's just so different, such a different mindset where making your own life versus letting someone else make it. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, and I think it's important, you brought it up earlier, was the whole workaholics mindset or what you're going for. What are your personal goals and how do you know what you're going towards? And then kind of like the work-life balance. If you want to grow a business, you can grow it up to $100 billion. You can just keep growing. There can be no end if you want. How do you know what do you want?
I can't answer that totally. There's moments in the day when you're working and you're having so much fun that it's just what you want to do. And I want to have as many of those as possible. I also want to balance that with it's amazing. If you don't have kids, it doesn't make a lot of sense yet, but when you see your kid growing and changing and experiencing things, and the more of those you see, the more valuable they become, and you want to be there to see them. And then there's time with your wife where if I'm sitting at the screen staring at code and totally having a great time in my la la land that is, building stuff out and not having experiences with her, then eventually that starts to feel really bad. And because you're losing a connection. And so maintaining those connections with the people around you, whether it be your wife or your good friends or even your parents, has huge value. Some of those things I find I have to enforce, it sort of feels artificially because I tend to lose reality where I get into code or I get into a business problem and I don't know time passed. And it could be 5 hours and I just didn't realize that I'm 3 hours late to dinner. Like that kind of happens. And so I have to set up alarms and sort of reminders about stuff. But what I find is on some time when you're not in that work mode, to think about your life and try a schedule. Let me set a schedule. So for lots of things too, not just connections, but you have to stay healthy. You have to work out. So I do minor stuff. So every day at 9:50, I do push-ups until I can't anymore. And every day at 2:50, I do some other exercise. I try to meditate every day at 4:30. So just there's some breaks there. And then there's day schedule things where I don't work before 8 if possible. Sometimes I do. And then I try to be done by 6. And I don't try not to think about it at night and work at night anymore. And that's more about what I've been finding there is if I'm not working all the time, then I'm fresher. And when I come to the problem, things get done faster and better. So there are lots of benefits to having those breaks. I don't know the optimum ratio. And I think you got to figure out for yourself about what makes you happiest and makes also the people around you happiest. So yeah, it's I think the rest of your life is worrying about that stuff. Just keep trying stuff.
The best part about it is you get to decide. It's not someone else telling you what your ratio is going to be.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're getting there too because at Blackfin we have client work, right? And clients are bosses, so it's not total freedom yet, but it's it's a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, that's step up. That's one of the things that I'm struggling with now is that basically I'm bootstrapping my own business and I'm doing the podcasts quite a bit, but it's basically I'm working. There's not a lot of other things right now. I'm working and trying to get further towards my goals of hopefully getting out to Southeast Asia down there, getting with entrepreneurs, kind of networking. But it's
Yeah. I mean, as you do that, I just encourage you to you got to find some hobby, you got to find something to read about that's not entrepreneurship or tech. Because I think that'll come back and energize you both for your business, but you're going to have different ideas than you would have had you just been so rail-like focused. And when you get a little crazy out there and you do something weird, whether it's like, your sport or your art or whatever, it's going to bring, I think it lets your brain relax and come up with better solutions to the thing that you're actually trying to solve. So you got to distract yourself with a little birdie, and then it'll just fix stuff for you. It's amazing.
I totally agree. I go to the gym pretty consistently 4 or 5 days a week and
That's
for like
great.
an hour. And I think that really helps kind of, like I'm saying, I'm working all the time, but then there's these other things that I'm doing consistently that help me get out of the zone and reset yourself.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I had for you, I was listening on a recent podcast, and I think Breck was saying that he was thinking about moving his family around a bit and bouncing around and then trying to explain that to family and friends of, it doesn't matter where I live. I can kind of do this wherever. Is that something that's interesting to you guys or that you've considered now that you have more or less a location independent business?
Yeah, it's something I'm talking about with my wife and I have talked about it, and it's interesting. I happen to love where I live right now, so I don't really want to go anywhere. And I mean, I had experience growing up where we moved to France for 3 years. And so we were outside of Lyon in France for 85 to 88. And I went to an all French school, and I think it really shaped my appreciation for difference, because we got there, we couldn't speak the language, had no idea what people were talking about. They dressed funny, different haircuts, like it was just a total culture shock. And then after 3 years, coming back to the U.S. and the same thing all over again, except we spoke the language this time. But teenage kids are way different in those different countries. And two things happened. One, it taught me to learn really quickly because I had to survive over there. And it also taught me that people are pretty different. So I want my kids to know that. And I don't know if growing up in the same town, going to the same public schools, the same social structure the whole time you go through school is a great way to learn about difference. I like the idea of traveling around. I also remember how painful it was to move around. So I'm sort of like weighing those. So we're not making any quick changes. I think Breck's a little more aggressive than I am as far as making life decisions, just doing stuff, which is why he is where he is and I am where I am. But I'd like to explore that. I'd love to go travel to different countries, even for just like a couple months in a row, for those different experiences. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, I totally agree. So how do you think that your experience kind of jumping out of corporate America, I know your kids are pretty young now, but when they grow up, they're going to grow up with their dad, and he's an entrepreneur. He's doing something different than everyone else. How do you think that's going to affect them in terms of their outlook on life and how that really changes their perspective on the world?
I don't really know. And it's one of the things that is cool about kids is you recognize that they are their own people. And it's not, I mean, they're made of genetically half of you and half of your wife or half of whoever they came from. But as far as where their brains are and their personalities, like that's like ongoing discovery. Like who is this kid? So I don't know if they'll be entrepreneurs or even technical or what they want to do. I mean, we joke that I don't care if they're freaking welders. I mean, they can do whatever the hell they want to do. As far as like life lessons and how we approach life, I mean, again, you can beat things into people. It's not very effective. I think the best thing you can do is just create an atmosphere where people or kids can explore and find out what they want to do and discover things. And I don't know, at least from my own experience, being told top down, here's what life's supposed to be like, just ends up failing because that life view that you get taught as a kid, man, shit changes in 20 years when you actually have to make your own decisions. So like, there's no way that my parents could have prepared me for, and in 30 years, you won't have to go anywhere because there's the internet and I can talk to some guy that lives somewhere else with a video screen and, that sounds like magical, right? So having a life view of you have to go work for a corporation because it's safe, that broke. And there's no way they could have known that. But that was the right thing to teach me back then. And so I guess I'm trying to internalize that and like, how am I going to be a dad to my kids? And it's more about just do what you like to do, be smart, do a good job for other people. And whether it's entrepreneurship and you want to make a ton of money or go be an investment banker because you think it's challenging and awesome, like I don't really care. Just be happy and figure out what you want to do. And that might take you 50 years. I don't really know.
So would you say for people that are just starting in entrepreneurship, I know a lot of our audience is kind of just getting their feet wet in their startups and entrepreneurial lives, would you say they're better off going for something of saying, okay, here's a business idea. I think this is going to make money, or pursuing their passions? I've heard a lot of different arguments on this.
Yeah, so have I. And I don't know. I think it seems like the higher ratio of success for the initial idea is canvassing people and doing the ideation of understanding what's your actual problem and trying to find that market, and then find a group of people that have a similar problem and then solve it. The engineering me loves that because that's like an equation. There are people that have done a great job off scratching their own itch. What seems to be great about that is that you have a ton of motivation, and so you can push through a lot more problems. Like when it's somebody else's problem, it's hard to really resonate with it to the degree that you really want to kill that problem. When it's your own problem, you can blast through that, but maybe nobody cares. So I don't really know what the right weight is there, and neither one's worked for me yet, so I don't really know. I can't really say. But it seems like people have success on both sides. It's just the first one seems more logical to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree coming from the engineering side. But at the same time, there is that whole, this is what I like with the podcast. I mean, this isn't a business. This is just a podcast. But I really enjoy doing this. I enjoy talking to interesting people like you, some of the other guests I've talked to. I hate the editing. I hate the transcribing. But at the same time, I kind of learn a little bit more about the stupid things I say or the comments that I make that are just like the repetitive okay and like and stuff along those lines. And I've gotten a little better at that.
I've had the same experience where it's like, holy crap, I can't believe I sound like that I say those things that many times, and then my laugh, I mean, all kinds of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, your laugh's pretty good on double speed as well.
Great.
I've taken up a lot of your time right now, and my last real question for you, Scott, is going to be, what would you say is your number one piece of advice to entrepreneurs that are starting out today in terms of not wasting their time or really going forward?
Yes. So it's something around, we're our own worst critics. We know all about all of our own flaws. And in general, those are pretty irrelevant. So like, don't worry about them so much and really focus more on learning and making progress every day. So what I've found, at least my experience, that there are times when I get so bummed out or worried or built up about something that's going to fail in my head that I don't make any forward progress. And the best times I've had was just like, let's just try it, push a little farther, maybe see that works. If it doesn't, we'll change. I mean, there's nothing really wrong here. If someone like points at you and laughs at you and says you made a mistake, that guy's an asshole. F him in the first place. So just keep trying stuff, and if it doesn't work, you'll learn. There's a great book about this called The Art of Possibility, which is pretty much when you fail, don't crap all over yourself. just kind of, he has this phrase of like, isn't that amazing? Huh. And you just kind of think about it, and there's no judgment. It's like, wow, that didn't work. What's next? So I guess that's where I'd encourage people you're trying to do something that's incredibly hard, and if it works out, it has an incredibly huge payoff for you. So that's a big deal. Don't shred yourself along the way. Just make some progress, So I don't know. I don't know if that's really deep or anything, but that's what I think would help people move forward. Yeah.
I think that's pretty huge. Just kind of just do it, just like stealing Nike's idea, and then really just learning from your mistakes.
Yeah. And being nice to yourself too. That's like, it's okay to just do it, but then if you fuck up, yeah, whatever. Just try it again.
It's really just about putting yourself out there and seeing what happens.
Yeah, totally.
So I want to thank you so much for being on the show today, Scott. You've been an amazing guest, and actually, you know what? I'd also love for you to hit up Breck. I was trying to get him on the show at some point and couldn't find his contact information. You're a little bit more friendly online, but
I'll tell him that. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I love your guys' show. If anyone is interested in checking you out, where's the best place to connect with you?
Probably Scott at bootstrappedwithkids.com, or if you tweet at me at Yewell, which is my last name, I'll probably respond if I remember to check Twitter because I'm not great at it. But I think email is probably the best.
And of course, guys, those will be in the show notes, Bootstrapping and businessandbootstrapping.com/session7. And if you're a parent or not and you're interested in entrepreneurship, check out Bootstrapping with Kids podcast. It's really not just all for older people. Anyone can learn.
Screw you. I'm not that old. Cool.
Thanks so much for being on, Scott.
Great talking to you, Matt. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the show and hope you really enjoyed it. You can check out more great podcasts and blog posts at businessandbootstrapping.com. And I can't wait to talk to you guys soon. See ya.